They say the operating room is the one place where death and life hold hands. Most days, I believed I was the one deciding which direction that grip would turn. But one night, I realized I was just a guest. Something else was watching, waiting, and in OR 4, it made itself known. I'm a trauma surgeon. Have been for over 12 years. I've seen bodies mangled in ways most people couldn't imagine. I've cut open men, women, children, and stitched them back together. I've felt ribs crack under pressure and watched pupils fade into stillness. But I've never feared the dead, only the dying. That changed in 2022. It started after the expansion of the surgical wing at Memorial Medical Center in Springfield, Illinois. 5 new operating rooms, state-of-the-art equipment, LED lights, suspended arms, scrub sinks that felt smarter than the surgeons. I was assigned to OR 4, a beautiful, sterile workspace with polished white walls and a perfect view of the heliport. For the first few weeks, it was just another room, another slab of steel and light. But small things began happening, barely noticeable at first. The clock in OR 4 was always off by a few minutes, lagging behind the rest of the floor. One time the intercom crackled on for a few seconds, though no one had activated it. Another time, we lost suction mid-procedure, even though the machine was fully functional. All minor, all explainable. Then people began requesting to switch rooms. Nurses said the OR was always cold, even when the thermostat read 72. An anesthesiologist reported that a patient's vitals had flatlined for nearly 20 seconds, only to spike back without intervention. A surgical tech claimed she heard someone whisper her name through her mask. I told them it was stress. Long hours, caffeine, fluorescent lights, but I couldn't explain what happened next. We were performing a standard laparoscope cholecystectomy, gallbladder removal. Midway through, the room dimmed, just briefly. Less than 2 seconds, everyone noticed it wasn't a flicker. It was like someone turned the power off and then back on. The machines didn't lose function, but for that one breath of time, the room felt heavy, charged, like we were standing at the bottom of a deep well. That's when the patient whispered something. He was under full general anesthesia, intubated, paralyzed, no possibility of speech. But I swear to you, every person in that room heard it. A raspy voice came from his throat, low and guttural, speaking something none of us understood. 2 words, repeated twice, almost like a warning or a command. I stopped my hands mid-motion. The pulse oximeter was steady. The anesthesia was unchanged. We stared at one another, unsure whether to continue. I felt a pressure in my ears, like a shift in altitude. Then it passed. The rest of the surgery was quiet. We didn't talk much after that. 3 days later, a nurse from the night shift refused to enter OR 4. She said she heard someone sobbing inside when the room was empty. The janitor who cleaned the floors claimed the mop water always turned dark in that one room. Only that room. Almost like it was collecting something. Still, I kept working there. I needed to believe that these things had explanations. Until the night of the stabbing victim. Young male, 28, multiple abdominal wounds from a bar fight. He was brought in unconscious, pulse fading. OR 4 was the only available theater. I didn't hesitate. We began the emergency laparotomy immediately. As soon as I made the first incision, I noticed the blood was strange, darker than it should be, thicker, not clotted, just off. The tissue was pale, almost gray. Maria, the anesthesiologist, asked if anyone smelled burning. I did. But not electrical. It smelled like scorched meat and sulfur. Then all of the monitors froze. Every screen, every reading. Flatlined, we called for backup. But before we could even initiate CPR, the patient's eyes snapped open. Not slowly, not reflexively, snapped open. He looked directly at me, pupils dilated, unblinking, and spoke. His mouth barely moved, but I heard it as clearly as I've heard anything in my life. You opened it. Just 3 words. Then his heart stopped, permanently. We tried everything. Shock, compression, nothing worked. Later, when we removed the drapes, we found something else. Underneath his ribcage, pressed against the inside of his skin, were markings, faint, patterned, almost like scars carved from the inside out. I took a photo. I shouldn't have. The next morning, my phone refused to unlock. The screen remained black. The photo was gone. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he had some kind of tribal scarring. Maybe it was internal bleeding pressing against skin folds. Maybe. But I knew that wasn't true. I spoke to an old pathology professor about what happened. I didn't give full details, just theoreticals. He went quiet. Then he said something I can't forget. Some rituals aren't for calling things in. Some are for keeping things trapped. I stopped operating in OR 4 after that. The hospital eventually closed the room for electrical maintenance, but no repairs were ever scheduled. The door remained locked. No one asked questions. I started sleeping with the lights on. I began hearing noises in my house, soft tapping at 3:12 a.m. every night. Always the same time. My hallway camera would freeze, skip 5 seconds, then resume. My dog refused to walk past my home office. He'd bark at the corner and whimper until I closed the door. Then came the dream. I was standing in the middle of an unfamiliar operating room, but this one was ancient. Stone walls, iron table, torches flickering. The surgical instruments were rusted, warped. On the table was a body, but not human. It had no face, no chest, just dark, wet skin and long, stretched limbs. And I was holding the scalpel, not out of choice. My hand was moving on its own. When I woke up, I was standing in my kitchen, barefoot. Blood on the floor, a deep cut across my palm. I never sleepwalk. I never injured myself. No sharp tools were found. A week later, I received a letter in my hospital locker. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. A blurry image from a surgical camera in OR 4, one I never took, showing me mid-surgery. And behind me, in the shadows, was a tall, black figure, faceless, almost blending into the wall, but undeniably there. Closer than before, I burned the letter, but the image is seared into my mind. I don't talk about this, not to colleagues, not to friends. I'm not sure what's real anymore. But I've kept my distance from operating rooms. I shifted to diagnostics, paperwork, lecturing, and yet every now and then, in the silence of a quiet clinic, I smell that scent again, sulfur and burnt air. I feel cold steel against my fingertips, and I wonder, What exactly did I open? Because something came through, and I don't think it ever left.